Sandy, are you and Jim having trouble?
Yeah.
I noticed you were sitting beside me.
Something about pizza or something.
Yeah.
Fighting over pizza. Okay. I don't believe that. That's all right. I want to talk to you about something today that I really think that, in all probability, is a two-weeker. I can't do it all in one setting, and I know you would want me to, but we'll see how things go. I'm always amazed at how we don't communicate often, as far as I don't know what Mike's going to be sharing, or Pete's going to be sharing, or whoever's talking, and so often it's just like things come together, like the Spirit is working and using the parts to come together to really make a point. And I think the way I look at it, I think that was happening this morning. Everett, I used to think that preaching a really good sermon made a big difference. You know, I used to think, well, if I could just get this across clearly, people are going to hear it, they're going to take it in, and then they're going to go home and use it, and their lives are going to be so much better. And I've come to find out that doesn't happen most often. Maybe once in a while something's said or done that really strikes a chord with somebody, and it really, they get under conviction and they go about and they do something about it. But I'm not sure that a whole lot really happens when it comes to the point of change or growth here. Now, the word, I believe, honestly, it says it's sharper than a double-edged sword. It's powerful. It doesn't come back void to you. It's a must that we present the truth and we preach the word. We have to do that. But I've concluded that what we've put so much emphasis on is getting people to church, sitting down and preaching sermons or teaching Bible classes, that is what it's going to take for people to grow. And I don't believe that's really the case. It doesn't happen. I used to preach at a little church up in Middleburn. I'd go up there once a month, and the old elder that was in charge of getting people to come to preach was Frank Birch. And I found out they only met twice a month. 2 Sundays out of the month. They met every other Sunday. And I asked Frank one day, why do you just meet every other week? And he said, we already know more than we're doing. Well, he's right. So I guess he felt like there was something better to do. I don't think a lot happens in this setting. Now, don't get me wrong. What should happen here, I think, does happen. The things that are intended to happen often do happen. That is, it's a place where we come for worship, hopefully in our hearts as we sing and as we pray, as we commune. We got a worshipful heart, and we need to do that. We're commanded to do it, and we should want to do that. We have fellowship. It's always so good to come here, to know that this is a place where you belong. You feel welcome. And if you don't feel welcome, I really wish I knew that. I wish you could tell me that so I could help you with that, because in reality, we want people to feel like this is home. This is your family, your spiritual family, and in often cases, it's almost like a physical family. There's great fellowship. There ought to be encouragement. I'm always encouraged when I see people and talk to people. We're encouraged by the word. Encouragement comes. And I think we need to work hard at that. Our goal should be to encourage one another when we're here. In the fellowship, it should be the type of thing where we're working hard to, what can I do to encourage this person? Our prayer should be, as we prepare to come, is, Lord, help me be a blessing to somebody today. Help me encourage someone. We don't know what one kind word or one thing can do. So you get my point. We need to be here. But growth and change, the things that the things that Mike has been, this fantastic stuff that he's talking about that we are expected to have in our life. God expects us to grow. Romans 6 says you're baptized into Jesus Christ. You are a new creature. But that's just the beginning. That's the baby side of it. And then from there, there's work to be done. And growth is expected. Maturity is expected. Change is expected. You have so much work to do to become that person that Mike read about in 1st or 2nd Peter about participating in the divine power, that we need to add to our faith. Faith is the part that you had when you got saved. But now, we've got to add that goodness and that knowledge and that self-control and all those things that make us effective people, happy people, blessed people. But I'm telling you, those things do not happen in this room. You don't change here. You don't grow here. And if this is all you have, if this is where you think, I went to church, so I'm going to be a better person, you're going to miss out. And it's not, the growth is not going to happen. Now don't jump up and run out and say, Stan says we don't have to come to church no more. Because you didn't hear the first part I said. No, we need to be here. But I don't think anybody's character is made better sitting in church. Self-control is not learned here. Now, perseverance, because I've persevered through a lot of bad sermons over the years and preached a lot of them myself. So I've taught perseverance in that way, but I don't think it's the kind that really we need to, I don't think our love is perfected by sitting here. I think you got my point. So, what is my point? What are we supposed to do about it? We still need to be here because God commanded it. We need to be here, and it's important that we're here so we can thank God, we can encourage each other, that God will speak through words. We are taught things. We are presented His Word, and we need that. We need to know those things. But what should happen? What really is supposed to take place here? I think, first of all, we better be grateful. We can at least be grateful when we're here. Be thankful for the little things. Gratitude is so important. You cannot be happy and you can't be if you're not grateful. Gratitude for what? Little things that are done. Grateful for each other. Grateful that you got up this morning. Grateful that you're able to be here, that you're able to do these kind of things. We need to come, and our Chicago brothers used to say, we're going to get our praise on today. We need to have that attitude. We're going to go to get our praise on. And it's an appointment. Really, I think what we need to look at is this. I'm trying to stand still because my daughter watches the program on the sermon on YouTube, and she said, Dad, you are so out of control. And I said, what do you mean? He said, oh, you're moving around and your hands are doing this and you're zipping, you're making noise. And I said, really? She says, yeah. I said, well, did you get anything out of it? She did. Here's what I think that we need to look at this. This is like an appointment with the doctor. You go to the doctor. Why do you go to the doctor? Often is because you're not feeling well. You know you're not up to par. You need something maybe not be right. And I can guarantee you, spiritually, no matter who you are, no matter what week it is, you're sick. You got things wrong with you. You're not up to par. We're never up to the standard that we really want to be. That's why He tells us to grow, to work on these things and have them in increasing measure. So in some ways, we're sick spiritually. We're weak. We have some disease called sin that affects our hearts often, and it's constantly challenging to us to be the right kind of people and to love God and to love each other. And so we come in and the Word is preached, and then we hold ourselves up to it. It's like an x-ray, a spiritual x-ray. And what happens, you may have a bone broken. You know, you got a broken bone, a hairline fracture, and the doctor looks at that and goes, oh, that's not good. You got enough kidney stones in there to pave the driveway. There's all kind of things that you could get told when you go to the doctor. And what's the doctor do? He gives you a, what do you call that? A plan of treatment, a treatment plan. Or a prescription maybe. He said, take, here, I'm going to write this out. Take 3 of these every day, with water, no food, blah, blah, blah. And you take that and you put it in your pocket and you go home. And then you go back next week and say, doctor, my leg is still broken, or I've still got this problem. And he says, well, did the pills work? Well, I put them close to my heart. No, you got to go get them filled. You got to do something with it. And so I want to talk about what I think maybe an example in the Bible of how we can address this, and we can see this need. But I want to stress to you, if you really are serious about growing, if you want to grow in your spiritual life, in these things that Peter talks about, you're going to have some things happen that don't happen here. It happens always somewhere else. So, you with me?
Yep.
All right, turn your Bibles over to Genesis chapter 32, I think. I ought to know. Yeah, 32. Now, this is over in, this is the story of Jacob and Esau. And if you notice anything, or if you look at this closely, you're going to see Jacob was a scoundrel. He had a lot of character issues. He had a lot of problems. And so he had stolen Isaac's birthright. And we'll get into that in more detail. But he had stolen his birthright, and some things had to happen. He got himself in trouble, and he had to run for his life. And so there are 3 things that I think have to happen in our lives if we're going to change, if we're going to grow, and we see them in this story. And I'll give you the 3 things. Well, I really like the fact that Mike is passing out notebooks, because I think that if you don't take notes, you're not going to remember what's being said, and you got to reflect on it. And he said you could leave it on your seat. Don't leave it on your seat. Take it home, because you're going to need it to really work on the things that you hear. It's the prescription. You got to use it. So here's 3 things that's got to happen if we are going to have a life-changing encounter with God. I think that we don't emphasize this enough. We don't think about enough that we need to be encountering God on a regular basis, where we're talking to God and God is talking to us. I've said that again. And God is talking to us. God talks to you. Now, you say, are you hearing voices? No, but He talks to me. He talks to you. The Spirit reveals things to us in so many different ways. And if you don't have an encounter, if you're not bent on growth and change, you may not be hearing anything because you're not listening. Because Jesus said when He was preaching on Sermon on the Mount, He said, he that has ears, let him hear. In other words, if you want to hear it, if you want to really listen, then listen up, because you're going to have to work at hearing what I said, because the things He was saying in the Sermon on the Mount was just the opposite. He was turning the world upside down. And their beliefs needed to be changed. And so the 3 things, I want you to write these down, and we're going to go over each one of them, maybe not all of them today. Number 1, the 3 things that are required: we must meet God alone. We must meet God alone, and underline the word alone. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Number 2, we must meet God for the blessing. We must meet God for the blessing. Not a blessing, but the blessing. And number 3, we must meet God at a point of weakness. We must meet God at a point of weakness. And so, this is where the story takes place. Jacob had just ripped off Esau's birthright, And Esau found out about it, and Jacob ran for his life. And he'd been running for years. And then word came to him, and he said, hey, this is years later, that he'd been married. He's got a whole raft of sheep and cattle and wives and kids and servants and the whole 9 yards. But he hears, hey, here the word is Esau's on his way over, and he's got 400 fighting men. Now that wasn't just for a welcoming committee. And Jacob started panicking, and he realized, oh my! And he did some things. He divided up his stock and his families, and did it different things. And so that one would go this way and one would go this way. He said, that way, if they pursue me, then this part will get away. If they pursue them, then So he's always shrewd. He's always thinking ahead about something like that. And so this is where we pick up the story. Now, this is the story of Jacob wrestling all night long. Now, there's significance to that. Now, I want to show you a clip. George, do you have that ready? I want to show you a clip of a wrestling match that I have interest in. It's not all night long. Oh, boy, look at that bald head. Wow. I ought to draw a little smiley face on that when I turn around.
Hudson Addicts.
Hudson Addis is Jay's son, and so he had a 30-second pin. He was pretty excited about that. And it was some kind of a tournament, King of the Rock or something, and he won his division, and he pinned the last kid in 30 seconds. When you wrestle with God, don't expect a 30-second pin. Wrestling, or as most of us say, wrestling, is one of the most excruciating sports. Marty knows. Seth won, didn't he win the state championship or close to it?
Went to a bunch of the championships. He won 150 some matches.
150 some matches. Wow. But if you've ever done it, 33 minutes on the mat is exhausting. It's exhausting. Now, Bob Flowers tells the story that me and him wrestled all night up at Big Rock, and it seemed like all night. It was probably about 20 minutes, but he calls it all night. I don't know what we were wrestling about, but we were teenagers, and teenage boys do stupid things. We weren't fighting. We were just wrestling. Neither one of us would give up. Kind of like this story that we're reading here, but neither one of us got the blessing that night. But here's what he says, verse 22. That night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What's your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask me my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. So, Jacob was alone. And we need to be alone when we wrestle with God. At this point, I want you to understand, nobody meets God in a group. Let me say that again. No one meets God in a group. You don't meet God as a family. You don't meet God as a nation. You don't meet God as a church. You meet God as an individual, by yourself. Wrestling takes place one-on-one, not in a group. If it did, if change was going to happen, and if all of our growth was going to take place because of sermons and communions and all the Bible classes we sat through, we would be spiritual giants.
Amen.
We spent so much time talking about growing the church. I think what we have to do is we got to grow ourselves first.
Amen.
We are not equipped to take care of lost people becoming saved at this stage. We need to grow into people that are perfect, or not perfect examples, there's no such thing except Jesus, but as better examples when it comes to godliness and goodness and brotherly kindness and love, all those things. We need to be examples of those things in order to effectively help people make that journey from darkness into light. And we're called to do that alone. Jacob's life was intruded upon. He was just having a good old day, good old time, but then all of a sudden, here he is. He finds himself at night, alone, and basically he's mugged. He's jumped. And you know, that's how we change a lot of times. We're just going along. Things seem to be okay. Life, you know, we're tolerating it. We're getting by. And all of a sudden, we're jumped. Something unexpected happens, a tragedy, a trouble, a point that is maybe made in a sermon that we look at ourselves and we go, oh my sakes, how in the world have I not grown past that? We get mugged, we get jumped. God jumps us sometimes and He wrestles us and He throws us to the ground. And we think, oh no, this is horrible. No, it's the only way you're going to get the blessing. You got to be wrestled with. You got to be mugged. You got to be jumped. We need to expect a mugging. Your faith needs to include a willingness to have your life intruded upon. Expect God to wrestle with you if you're going to grow and mature spiritually. I cannot think of a time that I have really, really grown and made a true heart change happen when I was flying high. When everything was just going great. Because when you're fully blessed and everything's going and you're singing zippity-doo-dah and it's all, you don't worry about things. You don't need anything because everything's going good. But it's when you get thrown to the ground and you can't get back up by yourself is when you start saying, wait a minute, what do I need to do here? God's wrestling with us. He's wrestling with you. I really start making changes when things are falling all apart around me. That's when I start listening. And that's when you start listening. The things that are troubled, sickness, money problems, relationship issues, all those things, they come about to teach us something. They come about in order to let us know where the true blessing is. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But if you're discouraged and down, I listened to this young guy preach a sermon last week, and the sermon was supposed to be, he said, I'm been assigned the topic of looking this year and dreaming ahead and looking forward to a great year. And he said, to tell you the truth, I'm not feeling very optimistic. He said, you know, COVID's still, everybody's sick, and there's still a lot of stress and strife, racism, and all these things going on, and I looked at my buddy, and we busted out laughing, and we said, I feel fired up. I don't know why I said that story. Oh, yeah. Trouble. Age, that's right. Trouble is not a bad thing.
That's right.
Trouble is a necessary thing. Tough times are necessary for us to find out what true blessings really are. We have to be alone with God for Him to get our attention. Don't expect to get it on a Sunday morning. Number 2, you have to meet Him for a blessing. You have to be seeking a blessing. You have to look for that blessing. We've got to seek God for it. Now, Jacob stole that blessing. You know, the story was, you know, in biblical times, the law was, the way they did things is the eldest son would get, what, 2/3 of the inheritance, something like that, and the others would divide it up among the young. And Esau was Isaac's favorite. He made no bones about it. He clearly stated he loved him because Esau was a hunter. He was a manly man. He was red-haired and he was hairy and he was rough and he was tough. And evidently Jacob was a sissy. I don't know. But it came time, Isaac was blind. He was ready to go, and it was time for him to do this ceremony where he officially would give the birthright to the eldest son, which should have been Esau. Well, Jacob found out that was about to happen. So with the help of his conniving mother, Jacob came in and they put fuzzy hair on his arms and made him smell like Esau, like the outdoors. And he came in and tried to change his voice enough, I guess, to fool Isaac. And I'm here for the blessing. Long story short, he blessed him. And away he went. And Esau found out about it. And Jacob had to flee for his life because he had just stolen the birthright. Now, in our modern age, we look at that and we go, that's ridiculous. Once Isaac found out that it was a fake and he did it under false pretense, he could have taken it back and said, nope, I didn't do it. No, I'm not going to do it. That's under you. You're not who I thought you were. But it didn't work like that back then. But what did Jacob think he could do? I mean, how could he think he could get away with it without Esau pursuing him? You know, he knew that it was going to cause great strife, great stress, great trouble, but why would he do that? Why did he want? Because it's a ceremony, and it's not just something, well, I'm giving you all my inheritance. He's pronouncing these blessings upon the person. He's saying these things and how much he believes in this person, and he's passing this right to him, and it's a very spiritual, godly type of ceremony. And you think, why would he do that? Why did Jacob do it, thinking, in all probability, he'd get taken back from him, he's going to get killed, and he's not going to be able to use any of the birthright? Timothy Keller said that he thinks that knowing the family situation, knowing that Isaac openly favored Esau, that Jacob was starving, hungry, just to hear his father bless him. The blessing was always something verbal. It was always pronounced. It was always, we think, well, God bless me with this or bless me with that. But we're talking about this spiritual blessing. It was always something that was verbally pronounced and declared upon a person. And Keller says, I think that he was so hungry, so needy, that he just wanted to hear his father say, I love and delight in you more than anything else in the world. C.S. Lewis says, everybody needs that. Everybody desires that. Everybody wants to feel like someone outside themselves feels that way about them. And the truth is, that's why we do so many of the things that harm us. We pursue so many wrong things, trying to get that feeling of satisfaction, of being blessed. And we're looking for love in all the wrong places, so to speak, as the song says. And so, C.S. Lewis has this article that he wrote at some point. It was called Joy with a capital J. And he says, I'm paraphrasing, but everybody has a deep-seated need to find joy and to be blessed. Whether it's through love or marriage, through your children, through your vocation, through money. But even with those that have had the best of all those things, maybe you've had the best of marriage, you've had a fantastic job, you've had great, loving, supportive kids. Even when it's all done and you've had all that, you still fall short of what you need. The true blessing can only come from an encounter with God. It only comes through God. These other things are nice things along the way, but that's not what everybody is truly seeking and looking for. So back to this wrestling match. Now there's 3 clues in here as to who he was wrestling with. So I'm sure when it's dark and Jacob gets jumped, you think, is this Esau? Who is this? Who's after me? Did he send one of his armed men to beat the tar out of me? What's going on here? But there's 3 things that show up to help us see who this really is. Verse 25, what's it say? When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Now, that's kind of contradictory. It says he couldn't overpower him. But when it says it wrenched it, you would think, okay, if you're going to wrench something, it was so bad that Jacob had a permanent lip. Pete, there was no hip replacement during that like you had. It was damaged, and he limped the rest of his life. So, what happened? It doesn't say that he smashed it. That word that's used there is he literally touched it. Bing! And crippled him. What's that say? Unbelievable power in the tip of his fingers. He was holding back. He was keeping from killing him. He had so much power, but he held back for a reason. And so that's the first thing that gives us an idea of who this really is. Jacob had to realize, man, this is no ordinary opponent. All he had to do was touch me, and man, what if he uses his full power? And then number 2, the man says, the sun's coming up. What's that got to do with it? He said, let me go. The sun's coming up. What's the principle that every good Israelite knew? Everybody knew what?
Couldn't see the face of God.
If you see the face of God, what's going to happen?
You're going to die.
You're going to die. And the man is saying, it's dark right now. You can't see my face. When it comes up, you're going to see it, and you're going to die. And so that's the second clue as to who this might be. And then Jacob asked him his name, he asked Jacob his name, and they changed it. But then Jacob said, well, what is your name? And the man kind of says in this sense, why are you asking me that? After you know who I am. You know who I am. Why are you asking that? I've given you all the clues. You see who I am. You see how powerful I am. Who are you? And so many things, sometimes God is just speaking to us and trying to get us to see things, and we just go, what's happening here? Why is this happening? God's saying, just listen, you know who I am? I'm trying to bless you. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to give you what you need. So Jacob is wrestling with God, and the sun is about to come up, and he knows. Here's the thing, though. Here's Marty. This is the part where Jacob, I believe, made the change. He knew that it was God. He knew that if he saw his face in the full light, he would die. But what Jacob said?
I don't care.
I won't let go till you bless me. And it's like he's saying, I don't care if I die. If I don't get the blessing, I might as well be dead. He changed all the things that he worked for, all the flocks and the herds, and he worked 14 years to be able to marry his wife, and how he favored her and how he favored her children. All the things that he put his stock in that he thought was so important and so valuable, he's like, this ain't it. I've got to have this encounter where I am blessed, the blessing, and I got to know that it's God that's pronouncing that blessing upon me. Any rational person would say, holy cow, get me out of here, let me go, I'm going to die when I look at your face. But he said, nope, I'm not going to. And maybe this is where he started to see what God was really trying to do for him. You know, the third piece, and it's way past time, so I'm going to stop. But we must meet him at the point of weakness. And I believe, quite frankly, this third point is by far the most crucial key or element in this process that we talk about changing and growing. When we see this, and I want to give you some practical things next week, or whenever I'm here, the next time I speak, whenever that happens, I want to talk about and make clear some things that I think you can go away with and use in your wrestling matches. But keep in mind, it's not going to be a 30-second pin. The wrestling match goes on and on and on. Through one thing after another, we wrestle with God about how to get through this and how to get through that. But he always gives us the blessing if we hang in there and know how to do it. If you have any issues or anything that you feel like you need to talk about, you feel like you need help with, I want you to make sure that you know that we got people here that can help you. Don't keep it to yourself. And I say all the encounters happen when you're alone with God, but we all need help and guidance to be able to even know what those things are sometimes and how to deal with those things. And Mike is here, Marty is here, Everett's here. We're all here where we can help anybody that might need to talk through things. Don't keep it to yourself and go away confused and frustrated. Take advantage of the blessings that God has in store for you. Amen?
Amen.
Thank you for being here. And I guess that's it. And so have a safe day. Don't breathe on anybody. And we'll see you soon.
God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above.